live, and I'm fiddling around with my technology, not for the first and not for the last time. So, everyone, I'm really excited to have Kate Brower joining me today, the expert in Melania Trump and in First Ladies and the brains behind The Residents, the Netflix show. So many things I want to talk to you about. Taylor Swift, Elizabeth Taylor.
Yes.
And Kate, and welcome. So you're relatively new to Substack, right?
Yeah, I joined last week.
Wow.
Yeah.
So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
So where to begin? I mean, it seems like, I was so excited when I saw that you had joined Substack because I'm dying to ask her about Melania Trump because I feel like she has vanished in a way from the narrative, and or she had vanished rather until, there was that letter, right? That was produced for Putin.
Right.
And there is now this controversy raging about whether Vanity Fair should put her on the cover. And I last thought hard about Melania Trump when it was reported that she's been paid a lot of money, right, by Amazon for a documentary about her. And I'm told that was her deal. She fought very hard for that. So, and then of course there was that First Lady official photograph that was where she sort of posed it in a tuxedo right at the beginning of the inspiration. But other than that, have we heard much about?
No. I mean, I think the Putin letter is the first time we've really heard from her since the inauguration and we didn't hear from her, but we saw her with the hat and kind of the high fashion aloofness that we're used to from her. But, I actually had coffee with someone who worked for Trump in the first term last week and asked about Melania because she's so inscrutable, so difficult to understand. And she really only has one person that's been with her for a long time, Haley Harrison, who's been with her for a while, Stephanie Grisham, who worked for her, famously came out. So she's very private. This person claims she's very shy. We know from her book, she talked about being pro-choice, which really surprised me. And we know also that she's, been critical of the child separations during the first term, but we haven't heard anything from her.
No.
And I think that she's just so content being a socialite and going to New York to be with Barron, as she says, but really to live a very quiet, private life, to kind of reap the benefits of this marriage and not, she likes the perks, but the downside that comes with them, she clearly is not happy about. And that's the criticism, right? It's that whenever she does anything, people really second guess her motives. And I mean, it's fair because we don't hear much from her. So we don't really know what to think. Remember the first term, a lot of Democrats thought she was, a prisoner of the White House.
Yeah.
And then we came to find out that she was so much smarter than people think. I mean, she was negotiating the prenup from the great Mary Jordan book about her, which I loved, and trying to ensure that Barron would be treated more like the three eldest Trumps.
Yeah.
So I mean, I certainly am not, a pro of Melania because I do think that she's wasted a lot of opportunities in this position. But I do think there's a way of looking at her maybe as somebody who didn't want this in the first place.
No.
She's done very little with it. But I do think the Putin letter was a step in the right
direction. So talk about that. I mean, were you surprised?
Oh my gosh, yes. I mean, talk about an unusual thing. There has been no first lady who's waded into armed conflict like that. that I can think of since, I mean, Eleanor Roosevelt was obviously going around the world, but she wasn't writing letters to Churchill, or, well, this would be like writing a letter to, Stalin or Hitler or what, it was a very unusual thing to do. And I would love to know if she wrote it herself. Um, I also would be interested to know why she thinks she has sway over Putin. I don't know the answers to that, right? Like, why would she have a unique voice that would somehow get him to stop, killing children in Ukraine? It seems like a little bit of a naive play, and maybe also for our consumption in some ways. Um, she's always talking about children, and she's always, remember the cyberbullying of the first term. It's one of those things that first ladies tend to do because it's such an apolitical issue. Obviously, no one wants to see the children in Gaza starving or the children in Ukraine dying. So it's a way for them to kind of look like they're doing something. And I think some first ladies have done a remarkable amount of work. She's just paying a lot more lip service than actual, you know, she's not somebody who's going to go out there and um, get her get her hands dirty in the way some other first ladies have, obviously.
And have you heard anything about how this documentary is going that she's participating in?
No,
Brad,
I mean, just a lot of eye rolling, and, I don't have any insight into how that is going other than the fact that people think it's incredibly disingenuous, the amount of money and the amount of control that she's going to have over it. It's not going to be an honest portrayal. And
no,
obviously, it's not going to be something that it's going to be like her memoir, which was, I don't know if you've read it, but it was pretty thin on really compelling. There was not a lot of,
or
obviously,
introspection.
introspection. That's the word I'm looking for. Although the pro-choice thing was, to me, a jaw-dropping moment. I mean, weren't you surprised to know that she disagreed with him on so many issues? And people don't think that she's influential. And there was a poll in February that showed she was the 10th most influential person in this White House, like behind Stephen Miller. This is what people think. I would argue that she's up there number 2 or 3. I mean, I don't think that he always cares what she says, but I think she's more influential than people think, and maybe it could be.
I agree 100%. And I think Zelensky tapped into that
Mhm.
by bringing her up um,
Yeah. Yeah.
when he came, right? And, oh, there's no question. And Trump was beaming when her book got to number one. I mean, he definitely wants her to be noticed and wants her to be admired. There's, I get the sense that bond between the two of them is tighter this time around than it was in the first Trump administration. I feel like he brings up Melania um,
Yeah.
when
I mean,
when
it's
he doesn't
interesting.
have to.
Yeah, it's interesting you said that. I interviewed Trump for a book I wrote about the President's Club, and this was back in 2018. And I was sitting in the Oval Office, and he was like, I don't. I thought we were talking about. I thought you talked about first ladies, or you write about first ladies. Do you want to talk about Melania? And I didn't really, because I didn't think he would say anything that fascinating about her. But like, it was interesting to me that he has this need to brag about her, need to kind of boost her up. And this person, of course, this is a Trump person, so of course they would say this, but they were very much involved in Oval Office operations, and they saw a lot of interaction in the first term between Melania and the president. And they said they are more affectionate than you would think, that she's not this ice princess, that she's actually quite shy. She wouldn't make conversation with you, but, if you talk to her, she would be quite nice. I don't think anyone cares about that. And I don't, You know, I I I I don't have a sense that that's what people are craving a first lady who does wanna make conversation with you and is quite, outgoing and soothing at times when the country needs it, and that is not Melania Trump at all. She is not, and she didn't sign up for that. So, you know, I I remember in the first term writing a piece for the New York Times saying that I thought that she was kind of a, and I know this got blowback, but that she's an accidental feminist in a way because she was changing the role so much, you know?
Right.
Like, what do we
Right.
expect from first ladies? Why should they always fit into our idea? Like, I personally think she has a much bigger platform that she needs to use. And I think she could temper her husband a lot more because she is influential, but she clearly just doesn't care. And so that's her right. Um,
Well,
and
and she taps into the last time. So the last time I sat in Donald Trump's office was maybe 2012, 2013. Um, I'm going back in time in New York, but he and I talked about Melania. And I mean, obviously then he wasn't running um for office, but he was proud of the fact that she was a wife who stayed in her lane. Those are my words, not
mm,
his. But I mean, it's the classic sort of rich patriarchal guy. I mean, his view was that Melania was a great mother who looked after, was a great mother to Barron, and she gave him, Donald Trump, the space that he needed to go play golf with the guys. Um, and he then gave me an example of somebody he thought was absolutely not a good wife. It was a woman who was trying to get hold of somebody he was playing golf with on the golf course on a Saturday. And I mean, he has very old fashioned views of what he wants in a wife. So she fits the bill. So what drove you to be interested in first ladies?
well, I've always that what you're saying makes me really interested in how he was raised. I mean, what that dynamic was like with his parents, the fact that he could hold to those really old-fashioned values for so long. Um, we know that Fred Trump was really a difficult personality, but we don't know much about his mom at all. I would definitely
So
be.
he's talked to me quite a lot about his mother. Very
Really?
proud. Oh yeah, no, he loves his mother, and that's part of the whole reason he loves his Scottish golf
Yeah,
clubs because of his Scottish heritage. And no, I mean he loved my sense
yeah.
of all my interactions with him. He loved his mother.
I do
Uh,
wonder if, her being, mistreated by his father or if they had a loving relationship, you know? Um, I
Very
suppose
good question.
we'll never know. But I'm interested in first ladies because I was a White House reporter for Bloomberg News, and I wrote a book called The Residence that you mentioned, and it all the butlers, the housekeepers, everybody who works in the residence who I talked to said that the first lady was the person they went to. Always the president didn't care about what they were doing. And it's funny to see how much that's changed in this White House, that Trump is taking a real interest in interior design and things that
Well,
other presidents have not. Um, yeah, so I wanted to look at the relationships between these women and for this very undefined, old fashioned position and how they've each approached it. And I think, that it would be really a good thing if Melania Trump had any relationship with the women who came before her. She's really the only first lady in modern history, at least, that hasn't had any. She's met with Laura Bush a few times for tea at the White House, but as far as I know, in this term, there hasn't been any discussion because she thinks that, she's done it before, so she doesn't necessarily need to reach out to Laura Bush again. And just, obviously because her husband is such a controversial figure, I don't think there's any way for her to have a relationship like even Barbara Bush and Hillary Clinton, talked about the transition into the White House and what that would be like. And I just think it's detrimental that it's not, obviously there are much bigger fish to fry. So this is a small thing to overlook, but the fact that there wasn't the traditional, tea between the outgoing first lady and the incoming. And we know that Dr. Biden invited her, but that Melania didn't come. It's all of these small things that I think are so important to our democracy and the values that we've held dear that have kind of just been bulldozed. And because they're such huge, weighty issues, we don't look at these small pieces like what's going on. I mean, the West Colonnade with all the portraits that are now being put outside. I don't know what's going to happen with those portraits in terms of whether or not they're even allowed to be outside. I mean, when I was reporting on the residents, the White House curators treat every piece of furniture in the house like it's a piece of, some museum quality, right? And the fact that Trump is just bulldozing his way, literally and figuratively, with the White House renovations is so interesting to me. And I don't know what you think, but like the Rose Garden, a lot of people would say there was an issue with
Yeah,
people's heat.
you're frozen.
Oh, can you
You're
hear
frozen.
me
You're
now?
frozen.
Oh,
Oh, you
no.
froze.
Oh, you
Oh, you're back.
can
You go because
yeah.
I'm listening. No, no, no. So,
Okay.
so go
Okay.
on the Rose Garden would because it's fascinating.
Well, I love I mean, the Rose Garden to me, it's like, I think that the point that he was making about the heels, women's heels falling into the mud, I actually think that that's true. I mean, I think that there was something, you could have done something tasteful there. The problem is that he didn't. And I'm so curious who is in charge. And I don't know the answer. What I do know is that the Fine Arts Committee, the White House Historical Association, the Trust for the National Mall, these are all safeguards that are meant to stop crazy things from happening. I mean, they fund these projects. Um, like the chief usher there is obviously afraid of getting fired. There's this, who is in charge of the design, like of
Well,
the East End
I have
Mall.
right again. Just knowing the man from his real estate
Yeah.
days, he is. I mean,
Yeah.
Trump, absolutely, and he's not alone. I mean, this is very common in the world of, I mean, certainly New York real estate developers, but real estate developers everywhere. Is that in a way they're all wannabe architects. They don't want to be paid as poorly as the architects, but they all credit themselves with a fantastic aesthetic sensibility, and Trump really believed, I mean, the reason, he's associated with gold and gilt and, because that's his aesthetic. But there is no way that he is going to be outsourcing those kind of decisions, in my opinion,
Mm-hmm.
knowing him and he cared because he really cares about this stuff. He really cares about the details of how the building. So I'm sure that's what you're
Yeah.
hearing.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing. And I'm hearing that the 90,000 square foot ballroom is, that will be built, won't be done when in time for him to, he will not be president anymore unless, God knows what.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
like,
But no, you're dealing. I mean, I think it's probably, maybe, hopefully interesting for people tuning in to realize that, this is a guy who will, just because he's busy, holding summits with Putin, Zelensky, the European coalition, and getting involved in trying to fire people from the Fed, he is going to equally be wanting to be involved in the details of the design, in the overhaul of the 100%. 100%. I can tell you that. That is who he is. That is who he is, and it will really matter to him. So,
Great.
yeah.
I mean, it really is. I mean, the only other times we've seen a renovation of the White House, the Truman renovation, obviously, the house was literally falling apart. Um, you know, there is the Roosevelts. I mean, I just think the Roosevelts are so fascinating, and I've studied them a lot. And I just think of the shambles that they left for the Trumans, and what a mess it was, because FDR was dealing with the Great Depression and World War II, and Eleanor was not particularly interested
No.
in interior decorating. And the Clintons weren't, Hillary Clinton wasn't interested in it either. And I just think that there's something to be said for people who are distracted and
Right.
not spending time on these sort of
Right.
trivial, right?
So, how many first ladies have you met?
Oh gosh. Well, I think about 4. And the reason I wrote The Residence was because I had met Michelle Obama at this dinner. Oh, actually, sorry, it was a lunch at the White House, and she was being served by a butler, and she was on a first name basis with this person. And I just thought, wow, this is so interesting. This world that we never hear about, the people who work on the second and third floors and their relationship with the first lady. And so, um, and I really loved Rosalind Carter, meeting her. It was just a fascinating experience because people still mispronounced her name long after she had left the White House and said Rosalind, and it really got to her. It's about the humanity of these people. I've always been interested in that we kind of put them up on such a pedestal. But as you do with your investigative reporting, they are human beings, and they're not infallible, and they have issues like everyone else. And
Well,
that's interesting.
and also, I'm thinking particularly of Michelle Obama and obviously Hillary Clinton. I mean, that the role of first lady, it is so anachronistic. It's first lady, but second fiddle, basically.
Mhm.
In a,
Yeah.
in a world where I think, my kids are, 22 years old, but I hope that, their partners will be equal, in it, it is an anachronistic. I mean, it's been years since I read Michelle Obama's memoir, but I do remember, I mean, I loved it. I remember thinking it was such a powerful book, and she was so authentic. Um, but clearly chafed at so many of the restrictions
Yeah.
it was very hard, as I recall, for her to find a way to use the platform in a way she felt was authentic and meaningful.
Well, I mean, I think for her it was just the racism that she faced too. I mean, having that to also confront as the first Black first lady, it was just constant. And she, like every first lady, since in the television era, she was very much aware of the criticism, and it's hard to shut all that out. And it is painful when people are criticizing your appearance, and much worse. And I think she got
Yeah.
you know, it was interesting because The Resonance was shot, the Netflix show that was kind of inspired by.
So tell us, because I'm sure people want to know. So how did that come to be?
Well, that came to be, but I really quickly want to say this before I forget, because I thought it was so interesting. The Obamas, Higher Ground Studios is on the same lot as the series that Shonda Rhimes did that was inspired by my book. And so they actually, one day, one of the actors said that President Obama went in and did a little look around to see the White House, but Michelle Obama never did. And in my mind, that's probably because of such a bittersweet experience that was
Right.
for her, being first lady. But The book came out in 2015, and it was, oh god, so long ago. It was optioned by, Kevin Spacey at
Yeah.
first. That did not end up well. And then in 2018, it was optioned by Shonda Rhimes, and they had a really wonderful showrunner and writer who wrote it, and it's fiction. It's a complete reimagining. It's taking I hope that more people do this with nonfiction books. It's taking the architecture of the book, and the way the White House is set up, some of the major
Yeah.
characters of the White House, but fictionalizing it so that it's just an outlandish murder that happens, and it's a dark comedy, and thankfully no murders have happened in the White House that I know of. People have died, but not murders. And so
Yeah.
it was really fun, and it was really amazing to see, and um but it took a decade. But these things take forever.
Well, they do. They do. And yeah, projects get dropped and yeah, and to your point, at one point there was talk in my life of trying to fictionalize my third book about Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump, but it
Yeah.
turns out it's not very easy to fictionalize. There was no way. There was no way that people would yeah. When you really thought about it, that wasn't going to work, I don't think. So now, I mean, there's so many things that I mean, we could talk about. I think first ladies all day, and hopefully there'll be a day when we thought there might be when there's a first gentleman. But I do want to ask you, because you wrote to me ahead of this about Taylor Swift, which among my children are very excited. I mean, we are one of those families in which my adult sons phoned me up to make sure I'd heard the news. So,
Really? Really?
I will add with in one case, one of them said to me, "So, Mom, look, Taylor Swift got engaged at 35. There's hope for you."
Oh my gosh. That's awesome.
It's really nice to know they care so much.
Yeah, it's lovely.
Um, but obviously, this is a topic that
Yes.
that many people really do care about. So what?
Really.
Yeah. What? Tell me. So what? I know you have thoughts on different levels here.
Well, I mean, it is kind of a random thing. I have an 11-year-old daughter, and I can tell you she is absolutely obsessed with this too. So, I wrote a book about Elizabeth Taylor, and about 2 weeks ago, the book about Elizabeth Taylor I wrote is the only authorized biography, so authorized by her family and the trustees of her estate, and they gave me access to love letters, and this is a woman who obviously had a very incredible, passionate life, married 8 times to 7 men. It's just an incredible story. And so a couple weeks ago, when Taylor Swift's new album was announced, the second song on it is called Elizabeth Taylor. So I called up Elizabeth's grandson. He was so excited. Everybody in Elizabeth's orbit is very excited to hear the song. We haven't heard it yet, but I think it's really interesting to see how, Elizabeth married so many times, she says, because she didn't want to, sleep with any man that she wasn't married to when she was younger. That changed as she got older.
Right.
Um, and there were all sorts of ridiculous things. Her mom had her take like a virginity test and things that were when she was a teenager. I mean, all these crazy things in the 50s that went on. And I think it's interesting to see the parallels with Taylor Swift because she dated so many people. It was part of her, career.
It's her identity.
Her identity, right? Being very vulnerable about these relationships and what happened. And I think that it's a good, even though there's so many terrible things happening to women now, women's rights, it is good that we can at least allow somebody to just allow a woman to play the field and not judge her. Although I know some people did. But for someone like Elizabeth Taylor, she was just kind of vilified in many ways at the time for all the men she was sleeping with and breaking up marriages. And I like to think that maybe there's a silver lining there, that we can we can listen to Taylor Swift songs about all of these breakups she's had and not judge her for it. There's a level of kind of some
No,
of
not at all. I mean, it's what makes her so interesting.
yeah.
I mean, I mean, to me, she's one of the best lyricists of all time. I mean, how again, you come back to the power, I think, of authenticity.
Yes.
Um, and yet, I think it's so interesting because obviously the engagement photograph was so, not not spontaneous and so clearly contrived, but in a way I think that's what we've come to expect from her. I
Yeah.
mean, you want the performative, carefully curated Ralph Lauren, everything. If it had been less than that, I think there would be bigger backlash than. I mean, I've seen, there's some haters out there now, but what else were they supposed to do?
Right. I mean, I know they got engaged, what, a few days ago after that podcast, right?
Yeah.
So it does you're right, though, like, we couldn't expect, um, something off the cuff from her, and I mean, in the same way that Elizabeth saw herself as a commodity, to your point, I think Taylor Swift clearly recognized from a very young age, people are gonna make a lot of money off of her. And and we saw that with her fight to buy back her music.
Mm.
Um, you know, she wasn't gonna let other people benefit from her art and her work, without fighting for it. And Elizabeth certainly did that too. She was the first actress, woman or man, to make $1 million in Cleopatra, and she demanded it. So I think there are a lot of parallels between the two of them. And it will be very interesting to hear this song because to me, I mean, Taylor Swift is so smart. She has to be drawing parallels between her love life and Elizabeth's and her child stardom and Elizabeth, right? Like it's gotta be
But
something.
I feel, am I wrong here? But I feel, and I haven't read your book on Elizabeth Taylor, but I feel that, so far, Taylor Swift's absolute control over her career, ultimately, and her control in a way over these relationships. I mean, to write songs about them gives you the narrative control of 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 what has been. And whereas Elizabeth Taylor, in many ways, was groundbreaking in terms of her career, but there was a sense that she lost control. Am I wrong?
No,
At the very end, I mean, was it all shambolic or not?
I mean, because of her addiction, I think that was
Yes.
the issue, right? And there is no sign that there's anything like
No.
that. So,
No.
right, I think her addiction in the end was, what gave her a lack of control. But I mean, what she did for HIV and AIDS was really the reason I wanted to write the book. And I got to know John Warner and her. I was so interested in her time married to a senator and like her
Yeah.
time here in Washington and how out of a fish out of water she was. Um, and so in some ways, Elizabeth was always looking for somebody to take the burden off of being Elizabeth Taylor since she had been so famous since National Velvet. And I do wonder, looking at Taylor Swift, and I know there's most famous musician, maybe celebrity in the world, has all these threats and all of this security concern, right? And maybe someone like Travis Kelce, he's like a big, strong
Physically
yes,
safe
physically
person.
protect her in a way, right? Someone to, like, be there for her because I can't imagine the weight of that celebrity at that when you've reached that point where everybody knows you and you have no privacy, and I think that that is where there's a lot of similarities between them, that Elizabeth was always searching for somebody to help her escape being herself. Now, I hope that I don't think Taylor will get married 8 times. I'm sure that that won't happen to her, but it's just an interesting thing to think about the ways that celebrity has changed.
I think that's 100%. And if you're Taylor Swift, what do you really need or want in a man, in a partner? Because there are many things she's done for herself at this point, you know.
Yeah.
So going back, we didn't talk about the Vanity Fair
Yeah.
issue. You know, what do you make of the fact that, you know, apparently the staffers have said they'll walk out if the new editor, Mark Codice, puts Melania Trump on the cover?
I mean, I know people at Vanity Fair, I'm sure you do too, and it's not surprising at all that I mean, you probably know
Yeah.
a ton of people at Vanity Fair. Um, I think, Michelle Obama was on the cover several times, 3 times, I think. Jill Biden was on the cover a couple of times. Um, I'd be interested to know if this is a Vogue versus Vanity Fair, like, we're talking strictly about a Vanity Fair cover, or is it
I
also?
believe so. I believe so. I'd be
Yeah.
shocked if Anna Wintour, although I know she's, stepping down, but I'd be shocked given the relationship, how that's played out with the Trumps.
Yeah.
Which I haven't read that Vogue have considered putting Melania Trump. I mean, obviously, the last big cover that Melania Trump was on in American Condé Nast was the one for her
Yeah.
wedding.
In
Uh,
2000, right? That's a long time ago.
yeah. So, I mean, I'm going to say something controversial. I
Mm.
I actually think it's you know, Vanity Fair has always, wanted to create headlines. Do you remember Caitlyn Jenner?
Yeah.
And a bit of controversy is not a bad thing. So in a sense, um,
Hmm.
I mean, I think, and it's often not necessarily what you do, but how you do it. Um, I have some sympathy if Mark Rodice wanted to do it. I can see why he would
Yeah.
want to do it. I mean, Vanity Fair, God knows, needs some buzz. I mean, it's really, I don't even bother reading it anymore. I probably would read a cover story
Yeah.
if Melania Trump was
Yeah.
on. I think, and that's presumably why he wanted to do it. But I think it's clearly a sign of the times. If it's, but
Yeah.
he's not going to be able to do it if his staff walk out on him.
Yeah. I mean, I tend to agree with you, but I think that it would be a puff piece no matter,
Right. Well,
like,
that would be that wouldn't. Yeah, she would only agree to do it
right.
if it was fawning. Yeah, and that wouldn't.
It's just,
Um,
yeah, I mean, it's like, I think we all are craving some insight into who she is, and she's put up all these walls, and I think she has been burned many times by both Stephanies, right? Stephanie Winston
yeah,
Wolcott,
yeah.
Stephanie Grisham. So I think she's really hard to get close to. I agree, though. It would definitely sell some magazines. It
It
would
would
definitely.
it would create some buzz. There is a fashion story there. There
Yeah.
is a superficial story. There is a fashion story. I guess. I guess we'll see. I mean, I'm reminded um, of how my great friend Tina Brown, um, who was the editor of Vanity Fair many, many, many years ago. But when she grew up in England like me, and she came to New York, and Vanity Fair was not a publication that people were reading. And she's written about this in her excellent book, The Vanity Fair Diaries. The story that changed everything and created buzz. Buzz was her great, watchword. She wanted buzz. Um, was She sent, I think it was Harry Benson, the British photographer,
Hmm.
to the White House, and he he got a photograph of the Reagans dancing.
Mm.
And so instead of just putting her on the cover, it was the photograph of the two of them dancing. And it was sort of the candid camera aspect that at that time was not something that was put on the cover of those sorts of magazines. And that she wrote that is what turned the corner. So it's interesting. Yeah. So Kate, now what are you working on that you can talk about?
I'm working on a book about, I collaborated on a book with Nora O'Donnell of CBS, about women in American history who have been overlooked, and I was joking with you that it's a very long list. So it was whittling whittling down these names, in coinciding with the 250th anniversary of the country that's coming up. Um in 2026. And so that book comes out in February. And we really just profile these women who I had never heard of. Phyllis Wheatley is one of them. She was an enslaved Black woman, first published poet. Um, and the woman who helped build the Brooklyn Bridge, the woman,
Oh, yes. That's a
yeah,
wonderful story.
wonderful story. And the woman who was the Wright brothers' sister, Catherine Wright, who was behind their business dealings, and all of these women who have been silenced over the years. So that I'm very excited about that. And then I'm working on a book about the presidential secretaries. That is, Missy LeHand, who was FDR's secretary,
Yeah.
Evelyn and Rosemary Woods, these women who sit in the outer oval, Betty Curry, who I've gotten to know, who was the Clinton secretary.
When you do something like that, where are the best archives, or where do you go, depending on how
that
far back you go?
the FDR library is great. Some of these women did oral histories. I love a good oral history, like at the Miller Center at UVA. Incredible to read things firsthand in their voices. But a lot of them, like Rosemary Woods after Watergate, went just traumatized and did not speak, even to the Nixon Library. So it's hard. She's definitely a tricky one. But I interviewed some of the Watergate lawyers who are still with us, and um, it's always easier to if they've written a memoir, as you know, which them did, that they're just fantastic. Evelyn Lincoln wrote an unpublished memoir that the Kennedy Library gave me, and nobody had ever asked for it before.
Wow. Why unpublished?
Nobody ever asked for it. She wrote it in 1984. She died shortly after and just kind of lost her interest in doing it. I don't know if the answer is that she was worried about spilling the
Right.
beans.
Right.
Because there's some stuff in there about some of Kennedy's, affairs, and there's so much kind of worship I found in doing
Right.
this work that these women have for the presidents, and some of it's romantic. I mean, there have been romantic relationships, but a lot of it is them kind of helping craft speeches, helping with policy in ways that are really underappreciated. So that's been really fun. Are you writing a book now? You're so
I
busy.
am. I'm pivoting. It's been announced, so I can talk about it. Well, I'm going again with James Patterson, and we're doing a book about the murder of the United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, and obviously the alleged suspect Luigi Mangione, pled not guilty.
Wow.
Is in jail in New York, and the date of the trial. His trial will be announced in December. So that's obviously a book that I think is speaks to the cultural moment that we are in. A lot of resentment towards healthcare companies. A lot of rising revolutionaries. I feel, as in the tech age, a lot of fear of being manipulated by algorithms and AI amongst young people. So that I think it touches on a lot of sort of important political and social things in the ether at the moment.
Well,
So I'm
before we
excited.
oh, I mean, I can't wait to read that book. I are
Yeah,
you
you might be waiting a while. There's a lot to do.
are
The
you writing to him in prison? Is he able to communicate at all in jail?
I will keep that to myself
Okay.
for now.
Okay.
But I think. Put it this way, he has a huge mailbag,
Yeah.
huge, huge. I
Um,
don't think he's short on letters.
oh, yeah.
Um,
And
yeah.
probably women trying to meet
Oh
him.
yeah.
You know,
Oh yeah. Oh
that's
yeah.
just
And
phenomenon.
and um, and then let me ask you this, because I'm a very self-interested question. So how are you finding juggling doing a Substack with books? I mean, this is something that I struggle with. I do find these interviews a very helpful way to keep um, you know, readers um engaged, and they're less, obviously it's easier to do this than it is to sit down. And in my case, it's really hard to break news because we want these books to be powerful and break news, and it's almost impossible to do that kind of journalism
Oh my
simultaneously.
God. Vicky, I was going to ask you this question because you have so many followers and you've been doing it for so long. I just started and I'm just interested in the conversations and like you said, I mean, I think it's a way to kind of keep I love interviewing people and a way to kind of keep
Yeah.
the juices flowing in that way, but
Well, I
yeah.
think that what's different about Substack that is terrific is that it's a community, and so I love that everyone, all the comments, and I do read everyone's comments, and I try as much as possible to engage. But I also think that it's great that we all, all of us Substackers also talk to each other, because out of these conversations, we all learn. Um, so my subscribers, probably, they may not have known that I've had all these conversations with Donald Trump because it's not
Yeah.
something that I talk about necessarily, particularly when I'm talking about Jeffrey Epstein all the time. So that there is a value, and I have learned a lot from you. So there is news value in doing these, and I think uh, having this community um, is of value to readers in a way that I had sort of not thought about until we started to do these.
When did you join?
Substack. So
Yeah.
I created my Substack when Ghislaine Maxwell went on trial.
Mm.
Um, and so obviously everyone, I will be covering the Luigi Mangione trial. And I do think that there is something about bringing what's going on inside a courtroom every day to followers, that there's enormous value, because the networks typically don't give a huge amount of time. They just come to the headlines, and it's like being wrapped inside a Broadway production
Mm.
for all those weeks, and there's a lot of drama, and there's a lot of things that go on, and I feel like those kind of newsletters are particularly popular, because you really are delivering something that
Yes.
people can't get elsewhere.
I mean,
And
I loved the Idaho 4, and, when you wrote that book, I'm curious, did you, when you got the verdict and you understood that he was gonna
well,
go
not
to prison.
not go to trial.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Not
no, that was
the plea
well,
deal.
it was a big moment, because I was gearing up, um, obviously, for a 3-month trial in Idaho, which, in all honesty, would have been physically quite grueling for me. I live in New York, and but I wanted to see this through, and I felt so. My reaction was, one, disbelief. I was very shocked that he was going to do that. Two, I immediately felt sympathy for the families because I knew that the Gonzalez family, at the very least, would be horrified, that they very much wanted a trial. And then I realized that our book suddenly became the record, because now Koberger wasn't going to stand up in court and explain why he'd done what he'd done. And suddenly, so the magnitude of what it meant for the book kind of hit me. And
Yeah.
I was like, wow. So we pivoted, and I have actually just been writing the pages for the paperback, because obviously the ending is now different. And so hopefully people will be interested to read that when the paperback comes out.
Yes, and I'm
So,
so interested in it, and I'm sure all of your Substack viewers are too. So
Kate, thank you. I hope we can do this. I feel like anytime something, there's a Taylor Swift event or a Melania Trump event,
yeah,
or anything, where we should be talking about women who have been overlooked. We should talk.
well,
Uh,
thank you so much. I'm a huge big fan of yours, so I appreciate it.
well, likewise. Thank you so much, Kate.
Thank you. All right.